Welcome to the Land Your Bet Sports Betting Show. We got a late night, Friday night look at the Saturday slate here in the NBA. 7 games to choose from. I've got some early best bets and a player prop that I'm getting ahead of here as well in this video. Do want to make sure you subscribe to that page. Also coming back tomorrow with another video, as always, in the morning time here on the West Coast and in the early afternoon out there for you guys on the East Coast with the final best bets and a few more player props as those props keep rolling in to us from these books. Let's go ahead and get right into a few of the things I'm looking at here. Always want to keep a quick eye on the back-to-backs, as you know. Always looking at who's on the front end and the back end here. The back end, we've got Charlotte with a bad loss, if you want to call it that, to the Washington Wizards, although if they're playing for a draft pick, it was a good loss. Then we got Portland, who ended up losing to Houston by 16, and they're facing Toronto at home again here on the second leg of that back-to-back. As far as the teams that are going to be on the front end, we are looking at the Brooklyn Nets, who will be playing Charlotte here on Saturday, and then they've got Cleveland on the road on Sunday, and then we've also got the LA Clippers here playing Chicago. That's the first game of the day on Saturday, 1 p.m. I believe here on the West Coast, and then we've got Milwaukee coming to town again after they did lose to the Lakers in LA. Another game in the same arena there on Sunday after they just lost this one here to the Lakers on Friday night. So let's get right into the bets that I have here for you guys as I take a look at some in-depth stuff for that first game. We're looking at the Bulls. They are in LA taking on the Clippers, as I mentioned, and it's 9.5 points. And if you were paying attention to the injury report in the NBA on the afternoon on Friday, you quickly saw all 3 dudes who matter the most for this Clippers team head to the injury report, all questionable now. James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. Kind of makes you think it's sort of like a random bit of rest that they all would like to have on a weekend, as they all just kind of got placed there at the same time in more of a day-to-day fashion is how they're listed. They're listed as questionable day-to-day, however you want to put it. You've also got Zubac, who left the game against the Rockets that they won by 6 points the other night. He left that game in the second half with an illness, started to feel under the weather at that point, and was kind of feeling under the weather before the game started. So he's now day-to-day. Not sure exactly what that means for him, but he does not have props up right now. So the books are just as confused as to whether or not he's going to play as we all are. But let's take a look at some of the stuff overall for the teams in the last 5. The Bulls have been scorching hot, man. They have some really good wins on the road as of late, including that one against the Dubs the other night, who gave a thrashing to the Bucks and then came back and lost by 2 to the Bulls. You can call it a bad loss for the Warriors if you want, but these Bulls keep winning on the road. This is going to be their 4th game in 6 nights, I believe now, and they played a ton of games on the road, obviously, as of late, but they are 4-1 in those last 5 games. The Clippers are 3-2 in the last 5. The offensive rating for the Bulls has been a big part of it. They've really just sort of, I don't want to say sold out on defense entirely, but the offensive rating much better than the D rating. And these games have been going pretty high and over for the Bulls in this 5 games that they've gone 4-1 here. The defensive rating for them at about 20th. You can see the Clippers have been of a similar vein, right? They're 7th in offensive rating over their last 5 and 16th in defensive rating in that time frame. So both these teams playing a lot more higher scoring games than they might otherwise normally play. And that's not necessarily even due to pace. It's just a really good offensive efficiency for both of them. The pace for the Bulls is still at the normal 96.8, maybe even a little fast for them, but still slow compared to the rest of the league. Same concept for the Clippers, playing pretty slowly at a 97.2 pace for them over the course of their last 5. And what's really interesting is the strength of schedule for the Bulls. They have some really good wins, like I mentioned, and they have the 5th highest, best strength of schedule and 5th hardest, really, over the course of their last 5 games. So even more impressive what they've been doing as they pull out these wins. And for the Clippers, actually a little bit disappointing considering that they've had a really bad strength of schedule as of late and played a bunch more cupcake teams. Let's take a look at Chicago's offense versus the Clippers defense. I do think there's some opportunities here for them because what they do well, they do try to get into the paint, not the rim. So I do want to make the clear distinction here between the paint frequency and the paint field goal percentage for them versus the rim frequency and the rim field goal percentage. There's obviously plenty of room in the paint for them to not have to shoot all the way at the rim. And that's what they do pretty often. They're the mid-range kings. As we know, they score a ton of points from mid-range because they have DeMar DeRozan. They take a lot of shots from the mid-range because he's their predominant offensive player. And that is still considered the mid-range when you get into the top edge of the paint and don't quite get all the way to the rim. That's why you see their paint frequency at about fourth, but their rim frequency second fewest, basically, that they're going second lowest rate they're going to the rim, I should say, despite the fact that they are getting inside the three-point line and not taking very many threes as a team, which has been the case for them all season, especially without Zach LaVine in there anymore. He is a guy that shot some threes, and even Pat Williams took a good amount of threes from the corner especially. So it's not really a big deal, though, because the way that the Clippers have been playing on defense is really limiting teams from getting those mid-range shots, but also not having that as much success around the rim. So if the Bulls do want to go all the way to the rim, they probably can. It's just a matter of if that's even the shots that they want to take, as guys like Kobe White and even DeMar are much better from about 8 to 15 feet than they are going all the way to the basket. You can see that this team, the Bulls, does not really get out in transition at all. 30th in terms of how often they're getting into transition. And the points per possession when they do get into transition, pretty good. 15th, not terrible, but much better than the way that the Clippers have been defending the transition, which has not been good over the course of their last 5. 18th in how often it's happening against them. And I do think transition frequency on defense is important, because if you're stopping teams from getting out into transition, you're obviously limiting their ability to even get out into the break. That's a great start for stopping it. But once teams do get out in transition against them, they've had pretty good success, especially over the last 5, in terms of scoring the 4th most points against these Clippers teams when they do get into transitions per possession. So the per possession is important because, obviously not everybody is getting out into transition the same amount. So you want to know how often they're scoring when they do get into transition. But that does lead me to a bet that I'll give you here in a sec. But more importantly, the one other thing I want to talk about here is the Bulls defense versus the Clippers offense. And that's something that the Bulls have been still pretty good at. They have been limiting teams to the 10th lowest effective field goal percentage in the league. Clippers, however, continue to shoot the ball really well, 8th best effective field goal percentage. All of this with the caveat that their 3 most important players might not play. I do expect at least one of those dudes to not play. Not going to try to predict who it is, but it's a very fishy way that they all just entered the injury report here that leads me to believe at least 1, maybe 2, if not all 3, are set to take a rest in this game. So these numbers are not necessarily going to be the most reliable if we end up seeing that at least 1, maybe 2 or 3 of those guys don't end up playing. The turnover percentage I want to show here, because the Bulls are not forcing turnovers. They're not playing a press defense of really any kind. And the Clippers, they're not turning the ball over either. Been really efficient with that. They are getting to the free throw line a good amount, 8th most in the league over the course of the last 5 games. The Bulls, not very good at limiting free throws, bottom half of the league there in their opponent free throw rate. And then the paint frequency for this Clippers team, they're not going there quite as often, but when they do get there, they're scoring it with the 5th best field goal percentage in the paint. The Bulls, they've got the 9th highest, I should say that's 9th best paint frequency, meaning they are limiting teams from getting into the paint to the tune of 9th best in the league. But when the teams do get into the paint, 25th is the defensive field goal percentage for the Bulls. Not good, 6th worst in the league in that time frame. The above the break 3 is important, especially if James Harden is playing. That's a lot more relevant to if he and Paul George are in this game, because those are the 2 dudes taking those threes above the break for them. And the Bulls have been very good at defending it. 4th best defensive field goal percentage against teams when they shoot above the break threes. Big part of that is obviously Alex Caruso, but they've been very good overall with their guard play. Ayo Dosunmu, another guy who's been really good at least contesting threes out up against the three-point line above the break. So overall, though, all of this leads me to go, I do like the Chicago to cover. Like, I don't think that there's any reason they should still be at 9.5 with the news that these 3 dudes might not play. They've been so good on the road as of late that it's really hard for me to fade them, even though this is going to be their last one on the road for a little bit as they close out this road stand, if you want to call it that. That basically, like, they've been really, really good. And I just showed you all the reasons why I continue to like them. So we're going to take them to cover the basically 10 points. But another bet that I do like here is about Terrence Mann. And this is a little bit of getting ahead of at least one of these dudes sitting, but that's what these bets are predicated on here. So I love the way that the rebounds and assists combined are super low for him. So we're going over 4.5 for T-Man in this one to get over 4.5 rebounds and assists. That's probably going to jump up to 5.5. If you do get it at 5.5, make sure you get really good money, at least close to even money. Right now on MGM, you can take 5.5 rebounds and assists for T-Man if you'd like. And if you do that, then you're going to be getting about plus 110 on your money. And I don't hate that either. I just love the extra little 4.5 that we get here as opposed to the 5.5. The assists are another thing because of the plus money. I don't hate it if you want to take points. It's still at 7.5 for bad juice on these books right now. You can get him to go over 7.5 points for about minus 130, I believe is the best number you're going to find for him to get the points there, the 8 points. You can also available already is 8.5 points if you want to go over that for him. The Bulls are more susceptible to guards like him assisting rather than shooting, and that's something we've talked about with Alex Caruso's defense as of late. Now, if James Harden is in, I like the points way more for Terrence Mann than I do the assists, but because of the fact that I don't know if he is or not, and if he doesn't play, this is a really good number for him to get at least 2 dimes at plus 115 on your money there. The Clippers, they dime up more when James Harden's in, but really, if you look at T-Man, 2 assists is easy for him. He's gotten at least 2 of those in 26 of the last 30 games without James Harden. That's a big part of this. And by the way, he hasn't played without James Harden since Harden came to the team this season. Harden's been in every game, hasn't missed one since he came over to the Clippers. But also going back to last season, 47 of 55 games, including this season, rather. Sorry, this is this season. I shouldn't have said that. This season, in the 55 games that he's played 26 plus minutes, 47 of those he's gone over. And so that's incredible. Obviously, when he does go over 26 plus minutes, he's obviously very, very likely to get this number here. And he's played 26 minutes at least in 5 of 6 games since the All-Star break. And I should be clear, like that's with those dudes that we just mentioned. James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, they've been playing most of these games since the All-Star break, yet this dude's still getting the 26 plus minutes. And when he does, he's really, really good for those 2 assists. So like him to get his, also like the Bulls to cover though. So let's move on to game number 2 here. We got the Celtics. They are in Phoenix. Tough loss against the Nuggets, especially if you're Jason Tatum and you all watched that. I'm sure we were all privy to the funny memes that were going on social media today on Friday after Jaylen Brown showed up with 41 points and Jason Tatum showed up with not enough and missed a ton of shots. And it was really bad because his clutch offense continues to be a thing of a problem for them. But the record for both these teams is 3-2 in the last 5. The thing here is that the strength of schedule is much more impressive for the Celtics. They've had a really rough go of things with their opponents, second best strength of schedule in the league. Suns, they've also been missing Devin Booker here and there as of late, and so their 14th overall strength of schedule in their last 5. Not super impressive, but not too much to poo-poo there. More importantly, the offensive rating for the Suns has been really, really dramatically bad as of late compared to what it should be for them. 23rd in the league versus that number 1 offensive rating for the Celtics as they continue to either rein in 3-point shots or get all the way to the rim, as we'll talk about in a second. The defensive rating has also been incredible for the Celtics, second best, but the Suns have also stepped it up on defense a ton to have the 6th best D rating in that time frame. Played some bad offensive teams, which is a big reason for all of this, as we've seen. So not really impressed with their defensive rating quite as much, but I will say it's an area of emphasis for them as they have been missing D Book and have had to definitely play a lot better defense to make up for his lack of offense, which we'll talk a little bit about more here in 1 sec as well. The pace for the Celtics continues to be about middle of the pack. They're never going to try to play that fast, but the Suns have been speeding things up a bunch with or without Devin Booker, really, over their last 5, up to the 6th fastest pace in the league in that time frame. So what is interesting, though, is that when these teams have played as of late, dating back to the last 2 seasons, right? That's the 4 games that they played over the last 2 seasons. They were averaging about 213.5 in really low scoring games when these 2 teams face off. So the defense seems to come to play in what is usually like a playoff style game for these 2 teams because they both have championship aspirations. Looking at that offense that I was mentioning for the Celtics, been incredible. It's either them getting to the rim or them shooting threes. We know that. And they really shoot the most threes in the league, not just because of the fact that they want to open up the lane for the rim, but they are very good at passing the ball. They've got 5 dudes on the floor that can hit threes pretty much for the entirety of the game. Like nobody really comes in that is not a threat to score from deep. Although Al Horford's having one of his worst 3-point shooting seasons for his career, at least as of late, since he started shooting threes, I should say. So it's a little bit different there, but it's really, really impressive the way that their 4th best effective field goal percentage is partly because they're either shooting open threes or they're getting all the way to the rim. As you can see with their rim frequency is 4th best. But the Suns' defense has been awesome. So their effective field goal percentage defensively has been 4th best. Their defensive rim field goal percentage is best in the league. Nurkic, it should be good to go. He's not even on the report anymore. He was injured a few games ago, but I think he's good to go now. I think it was just a sickness anyway. So the thing that scares you about the Suns is that they're not defending the 3 above the break quite as well, or at least they're giving up a few more of them. They are defending it in terms of getting the 7th best defensive 3-point percentage against 3 shot above the break. But at the same time, with 3-pointers, there's often sort of a little bit of a luck factor that comes into play. You need the other team to be off a little bit if you're giving up that many threes, because that 20th ranking for the above the break 3-point frequency means they are giving up the shot attempts from that part of the floor. If you're going to give them up to the Celtics, not always going to go well. You really got to hope that they miss, and they have not done that very often this regular season. So the other place that scares you about the Suns is if they don't get back on defense. Their transition frequency, meaning teams have been getting out on into the transition, fifth most against them in their last 5. The transition frequency for the Celtics, they continue to keep up some good transition numbers. Despite not playing at too fast of a pace, they do like to just get it and go as often as they can and avoid you getting back on defense when they get those defensive rebounds. So that's why their frequency is 8th best. Their points per possession when they get into the transition, 7th best. So they've been getting a good amount of points on the fast break, but we do see that the Suns have been at least limiting the field goal percentage of teams. So even though teams are getting out on the fast break a ton against them, they're doing a good enough job of having at least enough guys back to defend it pretty well. Let's look at the Boston defense versus the Suns offense. The Boston defense has been incredible, 3rd best effective field goal percentage. The Suns offense has not been incredible, 23rd in that effective field goal percentage. And though, despite the fact that the Suns have been getting to the free throw line a really good amount, the Celtics are getting back on defense. They're playing very, very good transition D, up to about 2nd best in the league over the course. I'm sorry, that's the free throw rate. My bad. I completely misspoke there. The free throw rate for the Suns has been impressive, 3rd best. The free throw rate for the Celtics defensively has also been really good. They're not fouling teams, keeping them off the line, keeping them from getting those easy points. One other thing I want to compare here is the road defensive rating for the Celtics is a little bit worse than the home defensive rating, where they've been really, really good. Obviously, 108.1 is incredible home defensive rating. 112.7 is nothing to cough at, sneeze at, I should say, for this Celtics team when they get on the road. But the offensive rating for the Suns has been way better with Booker, who is questionable. And that's the biggest tag that we have here in this game, is whether or not he's going to play in that questionable tag for him. If he's not in there, you trust this Suns offense a lot less. If it gets down to it, that 114.4 offensive rating without him, much worse, obviously. So we'll see what happens there. Not much to do in the transition. Both these teams have been efficient defensively and offensively, respectively, here in terms of the points per possession. The Suns aren't getting out into the transition very often. But when they do get out there, they've been basically the most effective team over the course of the last 5 games in terms of the points per possession in the transition. All that said, because of the way that this team is defending everything, and here's the injury report. My bad, I got to this a little late for you, but the injury report, it does, as you can see, Booker's questionable, Okogie out. Jaylen Brown's questionable as well. I would still expect him to play in a game that I know that this team is going to care about against the Suns as they're on this road trip now. But more importantly, the best bet that I have here for you, under 227.5 in the total there. And like I said here, the transition points per possession for the Celtics, they've been so good at getting back on D that they're really not giving up easy buckets there. And that's a huge part of this. The other part I will just say again is that free throw rate. We've seen the Suns rely heavily on getting to the free throw line, but the Celtics have played very, very good individual defense, very good isolation defense, and they have also managed to keep teams from getting to the free throw line. So I've got a half a unit on under 227.5 here already. And to be honest with you, I would lean on the Celtics to have a pretty nice bounce back game, although 5.5 is a bit much. This was at about 4.5 a minute ago, and I prefer to keep this under 5 points if I'm going to take the Celtics. So quick reminder to subscribe to the page because I'm coming back tomorrow with the final best bets that we have in this one. Let me get to one more game that I want to look at with another best bet, and it is the defending champs who did just beat the Celtics, as we talked about. A couple of the injuries I'm not too worried about. Obviously, the Nuggets have Jokic playing, and we know the Jazz are kind of doing what they did last year, where after a pretty decent start to the season, they're kind of folding and mailing it all in at this point. Walker Kessler is questionable. Markkanen's out. Otto Porter Jr. is out. Taylor Hendricks is out. So they're going to be a little bit thin down low, especially if Walker Kessler is out, having to rely on John Collins, I guess, to stop Nikola Jokic. Not sure how that's going to go, but let's take a look at how this Utah offense, or rather, let's just look at the overall stuff real quick. Then I'll get into the offense defense. Jazz in their last 5, 1-4. They're going to continue to hemorrhage wins and losses. Hemorrhage losses. They're not getting very many wins. The Nuggets are 4-1 in their last 5, continue to be one of the best teams in the league, as we know. And honestly, they're saving it for the postseason. It's one of the reasons I'm not taking them with the 12.5 points right now. But to be honest, if I'm taking a side in this one, it's going to be the Nuggets well before it's the Jazz, especially Jazz on the road, right? The offensive rating for the Jazz over their last 5 is 18th in the league. Nuggets at 15th, but they've been playing really, really good defense as of late, which is a big reason why they are 4-1 in their last 5, 5th best defensive rating, whereas the Jazz bad, just bad. 25th in terms of defensive rating, trying to play fast at about 100.2 pace. That's been ninth best, or fastest, not best. It's been ninth fastest in the league, whereas the Nuggets playing at their same lackadaisical pace, don't really need to worry about getting up and down too much. They're playing at 97.1 pace. That's been 17th in the league, so much more slowly than the Jazz are playing here. The strength of schedule for the Nuggets has been best in the league over the course of their last 5 games, which makes their 4-1 record even more impressive. And it's also a reason that I don't love having to take them to cover a ton of points against the Jazz. I could see us getting a lot of Christian Braun in this game, a lot of Peyton Watson in this game. Hell, we might be seeing a lot of Reggie Jackson in this game with the way that Jamal Murray has been nursing that lower leg injury for most of this season and missed a decent amount of games as a result of it. So keep an eye on if he's playing or not. I do want to point out that in the last 4 meetings, these two teams have not averaged very many points, 225, 226 total. And in fact, the 113.5 points per game for the Jazz that you see dating back to last season at this point, much different scenario. They played a couple times early in the season when the Jazz were still just running and gunning and trying as hard as they could, similar to how they played at the beginning of this season before they just sort of packed it all in and said never mind about trying to make the play-in or anything like that, because Danny Ainge and company don't want to make the play-in. They just want to continue to get draft picks and continue to see if they can build around guys like Lauri Markkanen and probably Keontae George and Walker Kessler at this point, right? So I wouldn't put too much stock into the fact that the Jazz have outscored the Nuggets, but I would say that it's pretty interesting. They go under very consistently when they play at Denver. And that's where the 2 games have been the lower scoring ones that go under. And when they get to the Jazz arena in Utah, pretty common here because the Jazz are really good on offense at home and terrible on the road. And they're terrible on defense everywhere they play. So it's scary to sometimes look at an under for them. But I will say that's probably where I'm leaning for this one. Tell you about that in a second. Looking at the offense for the Jazz, it's a big part of why I don't trust them to score points at all. Like if you want to look at the Jazz under for their team total, I'm with that. At that point, it's one of those things where I'm like, well, if I'm taking them to go under, I kind of just want to take the Nuggets to cover them because I know they can score as much as they want against this team, but they might not bring it quite as much. And if Jokic doesn't need to play as often and Murray as well doesn't need to play very many minutes in this game, then I think Michael Malone and company would prefer to have it that way. And in which case you're going to see backups who are not nearly as efficient on offense as the rest of these the rest of the starters for the Nuggets. But more importantly, the Jazz offense is terrible. The Nuggets defense is amazing. 4th best effective field goal percentage that they're limiting teams to. The Jazz have the 22nd best, which is bad. Let's call it the 9th worst effective field goal percentage on offense right now. The offensive rebound percentage for the Jazz is how they continue to want to score. We know that. We know that guys like Markkanen when he's out there, Walker Kessler and John Collins, they're attacking the boards a lot. Even, Colin Sexton and guards like that, they have very good rebounding guards, which is why they continue to attack the offensive glass. But the Nuggets are one of the best defensive rebounding teams in the league for a reason. They limit the other team's offensive rebounding percentage to the 6th best as well. And everything that the Jazz might do successfully, hitting threes from up top above the break, guys like Jordan Clarkson and Keontae George shooting well from up there, doesn't matter that they have the 4th highest frequency with that shot and are shooting at the 16th best percentage. The Nuggets are better everywhere, right? They are limiting that shot to the tune of the 5th fewest in terms of the frequency because they're not letting you shoot it. And they're also they're 9th best in terms of limiting the percentage that the team is shooting from that place on the floor. So we got another little even matchup here with the free throw rate, 14th for the Jazz, 13th for the Nuggets. And the rim frequency, not getting to the rim very often are the Jazz, settling for a lot of jump shots. And the Nuggets, while they're in the bottom half of the league with their opponent rim field goal percentage, still not worried about that with this Jazz team not getting to the rim at all with that frequency I just showed you. Quick another reminder to go ahead and subscribe to the page. I do want to mention, if you're still watching, we've got that college basketball up. Huge Saturday, probably the best Saturday in college basketball that we have coming up right now, besides like Final Four. Obviously that's the best Saturday, but this one is going to be all the teams. There's so many games to look at and so many good games to look at as teams close out their regular season play on Saturday. And so Oaks has a really good video about that up. But finishing it up here, the Nuggets on offense, 10th best effective field goal percentage, and the Jazz, as I mentioned, that defense terrible, 24th, basically 7th worst defensive effective field goal percentage. The paint frequency for the Nuggets, they are getting into the paint 10th most. They're got the 2nd best field goal percentage from there. That's whether they go all the way to the rim or if they're also just shooting a few mid-ranges or floaters, things like that. This is a lot of Jokic just doing a lot of turnaround little baby hooks that is pretty much unstoppable. Even a guy like Walker Kessler is not going to have a shot at defending that if he does play. If he doesn't play, I mean, you might not even need Jokic in this one because of how easy everything is going to be for him after he maybe scores 20 in the first half, or it gets 10 dimes and does whatever he wants, right? Like maybe he wants to bet on horses at halftime. He's going to have the opportunity. So the opponent free throw rate and field goal percentage, all that stuff is just bad for the Jazz. So I do look though at the free throw rate for the Nuggets, dead last over their last 5, really not getting to the free throw line much at all, but they're making a good amount of shots, so it's not really necessary. And they're making a lot of those mid-range shots. That's a big reason for why they're not getting to the free throw line and why their field goal percentage is so good and so high in the frequency, because the mid-range still consists of, like I said a minute ago, top of the paint, stuff like that. So the fact that they're shooting so well from there, the Jazz really weak once you get into the mid-range because they've got a decent shot block, well, a really good shot blocker in Walker Kessler if you want to go all the way to the rim, but they don't have good perimeter defense at all. And once you get past their guards, now you're talking about having a really nice open anywhere from 15 to 50 to like 5-foot shot for this team. So I really don't trust the Jazz in any way, but I'm going with an under for the game as a whole here. And I also, like I said, I would consider the Jazz under for their team total. I don't expect them to be able to score much in this one, but I know the Nuggets want to continue to play pretty slowly at home, not really worry about how what the other team wants to do. They're really just take on the persona of Jokic in these situations and go, well, we'll get what we want when we want it. We don't got to rush anything, and we don't really want to rush because that kind of neutralizes their advantage, right? If teams are just running up and down the floor playing in transition, that is the strategy for the worst team, is to just go, get as many possessions on offense as you can, because you're not as efficient as a team like the Nuggets, who are not worried about how many possessions they get. They're really just worried about being as efficient with them as possible. So that is a big reason why I like the under here. It has gotten bet down 235.5 down to 233 now. Might continue to drop a bit as we see what happens with, especially if Walker Kessler's in or out, that could impact the total. But as it is, I love it at 233.5, and I didn't want to wait to see it drop anymore. So that is the final best bet that I have so far for you guys, and all the time that I have for you as well. So do want to remind you to continue to follow along, subscribe to that page, jump in the comments. Hope you guys are getting a lot out of these early videos that we have for you, so you can make sure that you're getting ahead of the slate and helping yourselves too, right? Like all the tools I'm using, those are in the description of the video. So make sure you check that out as well if you want to be, if you're interested in getting the info how I got it. I want to teach you how to fish more than just give you that fish, right? So appreciate everybody here for sure. Be back tomorrow with that video with the final bets and player props that I have for you guys for Saturday. Same concept on Sunday. Going to be coming back with a Saturday video for Sunday to projections, and then Sunday going to have an afternoon video with those plays as well. And until I see you next, happy betting.